Right, so thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It's Magnus Nielsen, Lord Londonstone, and today what I want to do is start talking about the Mall and St James's Park and the area in front of Buckingham Palace. So I'll deal first of all with the Mall, but before I talk about the Mall, let me just switch around, so just stand back please. What I'm now pointing towards is the street known as Pall Mall. And that leads all the way from here, St James's Palace, which you can see over on my right hand side, built during the reign of Henry VIII, this marvellous Tudor brick gatehouse, and come back, and this is Pall Mall. Pall Mall is the street that connects the palace with Charing Cross and Trafalgar Square, and it was used in the reigns of James I and Charles I as a place to play the game called Pall Mall. That's how it gets its name. Pall Mall is a game played with mallets, large mallets, hitting a ball. So it's a bit like croquet, or even an ancestor of the game of golf. And people, courtiers and people in high society used to play this along this street, and obviously it was an inconvenience for coaches and passengers who wanted to make their way up to the palace. So when King Charles II came to the throne in 1660, he removed the game from here to a special place called the Mall when he redesigned, or helped the redesign of St James's Park. So we'll go and talk about that now. Right, so now I'm going past St James's Palace. This is the official residence of the King. Of course, he lives in Clarence House and works in Buckingham Palace and doesn't stay here. It's really the home of the Lord Chamberlain, who is the man who organises the monarchy. He's the man who really organises it as a firm, as it were, and really sorts out what different parts of the palace are going to do. But I'm just turning around here to the right, and we're going to make, first of all, we're going to make our way into Green Park. We're going back to Green Park again, and then from Green Park I propose to then head down the north side of the Mall all the way to Admiralty Arch, and then in another video the idea is to walk all the way back on the south side up to the Victoria Memorial. So as I say, the whole purpose of these series of videos is to give you some idea of what it's like to be living in London and exploring London in 2025. Specifically, it's Thursday, the 30th of October 2025. And we're heading towards Green Park. Just before we do that, you will see over on the left hand side Lancaster House, and you will see, and I think you may have seen this before, Clarence House, which is now the London home of His Majesty King Charles III. We can't get too close to it, they won't be allowed to get too close to it, but it's the white building right at the end on the left hand side. So thank you very much. Let's just go further forward. Right, there is a way through directly into the park, so it's worth knowing about, and that will get us onto Queen Caroline's Walk. And from there we can then turn to the left and go into the Mall. That's provided they haven't shut the gates. If they have, oh, I just don't want to think about it. I'll have to go all the way back. Oh, no, let's just find out. No, okay, we're okay, fine, good. Just go down the steps. One, and there's another set of steps ahead of us, so that is another one, and then we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, and we are now back in the park. And this is Green Park, and you can't see it because it's behind the trees. Beyond the trees is Buckingham Palace. Green Park here. And they never built over this park, and the reason being because there are buried here people who died in the Black Death of 1348, as well as people who were inmates, as it were, of the Priory of St. James way back in the Middle Ages. So because it's a burial ground, they don't build here. Obviously they don't want to dig up the bodies and then start the Black Death all over again, so that's why it's left undisturbed, which gives us this lovely open space right in the centre of London. Now what I'm doing is heading towards the south, down towards the Mall, and there's some other things that just to talk about as we go. St. James's Park, you might like to think of that as being the front lawn, the front garden of Buckingham Palace. But there are other royal palaces and other important buildings around, so I'll talk a bit about those as well. For instance, this one here on the left hand side now. This is Lancaster House. Lancaster House, which originally started out, it's changed its name many times. Lancaster House started as Godolphin House in Stable Yard, and it was occupied by Frederick, the Duke of York, who was the younger brother of King George IV. He moved in there, and when it moved into Godolphin House, he called it York House. It was called York House for quite a while, and then eventually the Duke of York died in 1828, and then the building passed over to a man who became the Duke of Sutherland, and it then became Sutherland House. And it was very close, as you can see, to Buckingham Palace. And during the early years of the reign of Queen Victoria, Sutherland House was a great centre for high society who used to meet there, regular parties and so forth. They had some very distinguished people. They had Chopin, the composer, played the piano for Queen Victoria when she was invited there. And we had people like Garibaldi, the Italian patriot. So it was a place for distinction, people to be entertained. It was sold in 1912 to a man called Lord Leverhulme, who then called it Lancaster House in honour of his native county. And it then became the home for the London Museum, and eventually it was taken over. All that stuff was shifted out, and it's become a place now for government receptions. You sometimes hear of the Lancaster House conferences, which took place here in the 1980s to try and sort out the situation about the independence of what was then Rhodesia and has now become Zimbabwe. But actually more recently they've had talks here between the Chinese government and the American government on the trade war between those two countries. So it's still significant. It's a place where we have some high-level diplomacy still taking place of an international character. Right, so here we are. We're now coming towards the Mall, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment as we go forward. Originally, you can see here over on the right hand side, that is Buckingham Palace with the Victoria Memorial, and here we have a place for riding horses. Now this was the original mall that was laid out in 1660 for this special game that high society used to play during the reign of King Charles II, which was 1660 to 1685. And they took such great care that they had fragments of cockle shells to line it so they could produce a surface for the ball, for the balls of the game of Pall Mall. Now there, you can just about see Clarence House just through the trees. That is where King Charles is ready. It's his home. As you can see, it's tucked away. It's very, very private, and that's the way he likes it. And why shouldn't he? Once upon a time, you used to have guardsmen on duty here from one of the guards regiments, but they were removed after the murder of, I think it was Lee Rigby. Yes, it was Lee Rigby in Woolwich, and ever since then they've thought it prudent to remove military personnel from places where they are an obvious temptation and target to people who want to blow us all up and kill us. So they've been removed from there. Anyway, this is Clarence House, which is really an extension of St James's Palace. I suppose you could just walk straight through from Clarence House into St James's Palace if you do that. I've never been inside. It's not the sort of place that you can so easily get inside. But anyway, the original mall was laid out on this particular path, and that was simply because they didn't want to have the coaches up to St James's Palace obstructed. And then in 1911 or thereabouts, when they were going through the refurbishment and overhaul of Buckingham Palace for King George V, they created this avenue of trees as a sort of grand processional route up towards the palace. The thinking being that if any time there were some diplomatic problems with the state of affairs in Europe, the crowned heads of Europe could all meet at Buckingham Palace at the invitation of the King over a cup of tea, and they would all be sorted out without people having to go to war. Anyway, that was the idealistic thinking of the time. This didn't happen, as I'm sure you're aware, although the Tsar of Russia was a guest at the inauguration of Victoria Memorial, as indeed was Kaiser Wilhelm. The nations of Europe went to war in 1914, and a very bloody business it was too. Anyway, we've just crossed over, and what we can do at this point is just look round to the Marlborough Gates, and we can also look back to Buckingham Palace, and then we can also see through the trees Marlborough House, which is the current home of the Commonwealth of Nations, the place where the nations of what used to be the former British Empire, now joined up in a voluntary association in an organisation called the British Commonwealth. Right, so we'll make our way down here. No, we won't. I'll tell you what we'll do. We will make our way onto the new mall, which you can see the red tarmac, and you can. This was all laid out, as I say, in 1911 or thereabouts, as the processional avenue, the entrance, the grand entrance to the new Buckingham Palace, or the newly refurbished Buckingham Palace. And just a piece of totally useless information, which may be of interest to you. If I stretch out here, you can see all the way from Admiralty Arch all the way up to the Victoria Memorial, and that distance is exactly 1 kilometre. So quite evidently the people who laid this out were anticipating the change from imperial measures to metric measures. And if you ever wanted to have an idea of how long was a kilometre was the length of the Mall, the distance from Admiralty Arch to the Victoria Memorial. So that was a way of visualising the length of 1 kilometre. So, we're going along the Mall. The King does not allow buses or coaches to come up the Mall, so but it is otherwise an ordinary traffic route, but not for buses or coaches. And here you can see one of these extraordinary street lamps, and if you look very closely, let's get a closer look at this, you will see that there is a galleon right at the top. Some people come away with the idea that they have galleons on all these lampposts, and the thinking is that they are the fleet that was being commanded by Admiral Lord Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar. That's really an urban myth. It's not entirely true. It's not really true at all. So, 1 kilometre, which is just what? It's just over half a mile. It's 5/8 of a mile. Now down here we have Carlton House Terrace. This was designed by John Nash in the 1820s. He was also instrumental in the redesign of St James's Park. Now, I'm talking about the Mall and St James's Park and the designs of King Charles II. He engaged the landscape designer André Le Nôtre, who had actually laid out the gardens at the Palace of Versailles in France, to come to England and do the same sort of job in London that he'd done in Paris. So he was the original man who designed and laid out the Mall, and also in Greenwich Park. So we owe it to a French landscape designer. Now here we will just go and have a look at this, because what we have is the memorial to King George VI and to his wife, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Let's just go and have a quick look. So we'll just go back. Go back to the old trackway. There we are. And you'll see these statues. How long? I've been on this for what, 18 minutes? That's quite a while actually. But you know, there's actually quite a lot to talk about. That is the statue, the gentleman. I shouldn't say the gentleman. It's not more than a gentleman. It's His Majesty, His late Majesty, King George VI. He's the present King's grandfather, on account of the fact that he was the father of Queen Elizabeth II. And standing in front of him is the statue of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, who was born in 1900 and died in the year 2002, living to the age of 101, which is quite an achievement in itself, really. The Queen, our late Queen, lived to the age of 96. It's a shame she might have just gone on for another 4 years or so, but the understanding is, I mean, they say she died of old age, but there was a story going out that she had bone cancer, which means that if that's the case, she would have been in considerable pain, and nobody would wish her 4 years of pain. Anyway, just down here, this is this lovely terrace. I mean, I talk about the architecture of London and how appalling so much of the modern architecture is, but this is really quite astonishing, and you see how much of the architectural tradition that we have actually lost in this city. But it's just reassuring to know these buildings are still here after all this period of time. Right, well, head down here. Not far to go now, just so bear with me on this one. You've got down here, if I talk about lamps, these lamps here are gas lamps. They're actually installed in the park in 1822. They're some of the really original gas lamps of old London. And as you'll see just a little bit further forward, they're still used for that purpose. Of course, most of the lamps, street lamp lighting in modern London is electricity, but we still retain the gas lamps of the 19th century. And you'll see an example of what I'm talking about just here. There we have it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a gas lamp from bygone days. Making our way down here now. We're coming to a flight of stairs, and you'll see those just in a moment, just over on the left hand side. And these stairs, here they are, they'll take you all the way up here. And this is the Duke of York's column. Again, this is a column that was set up to Frederick, the Duke of York, the younger brother of King George IV, who was the official head of the British Army during the Napoleonic Wars. He was the grand old Duke of York who had 10,000 men, marched them up to the top of the hill, marched them down again. And these are his stairs that will take us up to Regent Street. But immediately just beyond the column, you had the original site of Carlton House, which was the home of George IV before he became George IV, when he was Prince Regent. This building here on the left hand side is the Institute of Contemporary Arts. There you go. And that was founded in 1946 as a place for painters and literary people to meet and talk with each other on artistic matters. They also had the Royal Academy to do that, but no doubt they were talking about modern art, which many of the Royal Academicians probably did not entirely approve of. So anyway, the Institute of Contemporary Arts is a place which, as the name suggests, deals with contemporary art. So it's one of the things you must see if you are a rabid fan of contemporary art. So we're almost now down towards the end of the mall. And then I shall just close down. So how much time have I got? 23 minutes. You can't actually see the Admiralty Arch because it's under scaffolding at the present moment, which is a bit of a shame, really. Perhaps I'll come back. When I come back here, they'll have taken it down. But anyway, here it is. Now, just to round up, you will see here there is a monument to the Marines, the Marine Corps, who were founded in 1664 as a regiment of foot of the Duke of York at that time, who later became James II. Where are they? So this is their monument here. And they fight on land and sea. That's why they're called the Marines, really. Let's just see what we can find out about them. There is a relief here. It doesn't say what it depicts. Too bad, never mind. Erected to the officers and men of the Royal Marines in memory of their comrades who were killed in action or died of wounds or disease, South Africa and China, 1899 to 1900. Gibraltar, and as it says, per mare per terram, which means by sea and by land. And we have another relief which also doesn't explain what it depicts. Okay, so here I am, ladies and gentlemen, in one end of the mall, and you can see from here, or maybe not entirely, but goes all the way down to Victoria Memorial and Buckingham Palace. That is 1 kilometre, ladies and gentlemen. What I propose to do is to round off here, and the next video I will cross over the mall, and having walked all the way down here, I will walk all the way back up to the Victoria Memorial and Buckingham Palace. So I look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I shall be very glad to receive any comments you may wish to make about the video, and to like and subscribe, or dislike and subscribe, or whatever. And I look forward to reading all your comments. But for the time being, I shall now say over and out. Thank you very much.